What would you do if, after 23 years of silence, the first words you heard from your own son were him calling you a burden to his wife while planning to lock you away in a nursing home and steal everything you owned? Would you pretend you were still deaf and gather evidence? Or would you confront them immediately with the rage of 2 decades worth of unspoken pain? I stood frozen in their kitchen, my hands gripping the counter for support, as James's voice, the voice of the baby I raised alone after his father died, the voice I hadn't heard since that drunk driver stole my hearing along with my husband, casually told Emily, "Once we get her declared incompetent, we can sell her house and finally get out of this financial mess. She won't even know what's happening. She can't hear us anyway." But I could hear them. Every cruel word, every calculated plan, every betrayal dressed up as concern. The experimental surgery I'd undergone just 3 days ago at Mercy General had worked. Doctor Carter's revolutionary cochlear implant procedure had given me back what I'd lost 23 years ago. I'd kept it secret, wanting to surprise them with the miracle of my restored hearing. Instead, they surprised me with the truth of who they really were. And what they didn't know, what they would soon learn in the most devastating way possible, was that a woman who has survived 23 years in silence has learned patience, strategy, and the kind of strength that only comes from being underestimated. They thought I was helpless. They were about to discover that the sweetest revenge isn't served cold. It's served with perfect hearing and a recording device. The morning I woke up from the surgery, the world rushed back to me in waves. Not the visual world I'd grown accustomed to navigating with heightened awareness, but the auditory one, that symphony of existence I'd forgotten existed. The beeping of monitors became a melody. The shuffle of nurses' shoes on linoleum was percussion. And Dr. Carter's voice, when he leaned over to check on me, was the first human voice I'd heard clearly in over 2 decades. "Can you hear me, Margaret?" he asked, his Boston accent wrapping around my name like a warm blanket. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Yes," I whispered, and the sound of my own voice, not the muffled vibration I'd grown used to feeling in my throat, but the actual sound, made me sob harder. "The implant is working perfectly," he said, squeezing my hand. "You're our miracle patient, Margaret." After 23 years of profound deafness from traumatic injury, most doctors would have said this was impossible. Impossible. That word had followed me like a shadow since the accident. It was impossible that I'd survived when William hadn't. Impossible that I'd raised James alone without being able to hear his first words, his laughter, his teenage arguments. Impossible that I'd ever be anything more than the silent widow in the corner, reading lips and depending on others' patience. But I'd made the impossible possible before. I'd learned sign language at 45. I'd kept my job at the library by becoming their expert in digital archiving. I'd raised a son who went to college, married a beautiful woman, and gave me 2 grandchildren, Lily, now 16, and Ethan, 14. I'd built a life in the silence. The surgery had cost me $87,000, my entire savings account, the one I'd been building since William's life insurance payout. James had been furious when he found out I was considering it. "Mom, that's insane." He'd signed aggressively during our last dinner together, 2 months ago. "You're 68 years old. You've adapted to being deaf. Why risk surgery? Why waste that money?" Waste? As if wanting to hear my grandchildren's voices was wasteful. As if wanting to experience music again, to hear the rain, to have a phone conversation. As if these were frivolous desires of a foolish old woman. Emily had been more subtle in her disapproval. "We're just concerned about you, Mom," she'd said, her lips carefully forming the words, while her eyes calculated something else entirely. "That money could be your safety net. What if you need care later?" Care. They meant a nursing home. They meant somewhere to put me when I became too inconvenient. But I'd gone through with it anyway, telling them I was visiting my sister Ruth in Phoenix for 2 weeks. Ruth had been dead for 3 years, but they'd never bothered to stay in touch with my side of the family, so they didn't know. I checked myself into Mercy General alone, signed all the papers myself, and put my faith in Dr. Carter's skilled hands. The plan was simple: recover for 3 days in the hospital, then surprise them. I imagined their joy. I imagined James crying with happiness, Emily hugging me, the kids screaming with excitement that Grandma could finally hear them. I imagined family dinners where I could follow conversations without exhausting myself reading lips, where I could laugh at jokes in real time, where I could be part of things instead of adjacent to them. I took a taxi from the hospital to James's house in Westfield, the suburb 40 minutes from my own home where they'd moved 5 years ago. The driver chatted about the weather, the Patriots' chances this season, his daughter's wedding. I listened to it all greedily, storing up voices like treasures. Every sound was a gift: the turn signal, the radio commercials, even the angry honking in traffic. James's house sat on a cul-de-sac lined with identical McMansions, each with their perfect lawns and three-car garages. I'd helped with the down payment, giving them $50,000 from William's pension fund. For the grandkids, I'd written on the check, imagining holiday gatherings and summer barbecues where I'd finally feel like I belonged. I still had my key. They'd never asked for it back, probably assuming a deaf old woman would never use it. The house was quiet when I entered, but I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the grandfather clock Emily had inherited from her mother, the distant sound of a lawnmower from a neighbor's yard. Such ordinary sounds, but to me, they were symphonies. I was heading to the guest room to wait for them when I heard the garage door opening. My heart leaped. They were home early. I moved toward the kitchen to surprise them, already imagining their shocked faces, when I heard Emily's voice. God, I thought she'd never leave. 2 weeks of freedom from the weekly guilt dinner. I froze in the hallway. "Don't," James replied, and for a moment, I thought he was defending me. Then he continued, "We need to keep her happy for a few more months. Once we get her to sign the papers, we can move forward with everything." "The Brookside Manor has an opening," Emily said. I heard keys hitting the counter, heels clicking on tile. "I toured it yesterday. It's adequate. They have a special wing for deaf residents. She'll be fine there." "How much?" James asked. "3,000 a month, but once we sell her house, that'll cover years of care. The property alone is worth $400,000, and she owns it outright." My house. The house William and I had bought in 1979, where we'd raised James, where I'd planted roses for our anniversary, where I'd learned to navigate in darkness after losing my hearing. They were planning to take my house. "What about her bank accounts?" James asked. "The lawyer says if we get power of attorney while she's still competent, it's cleaner. But if she resists, we can go the incompetency route. The fact that she blew through $87,000 on some experimental surgery she didn't even tell us about. That's evidence of impaired judgment. I pressed my hand to my mouth to stifle a gasp. The surgery that had given me back my hearing, they were going to use it against me. I found the paperwork in her desk, Emily continued. Dr. Carter at Mercy General. We could probably argue that anyone who spends their life savings on an experimental procedure at her age isn't thinking clearly. When should we do it? James asked. The family dinner Sunday. We'll frame it as concern for her future, making sure she's taken care of. Your mom's always been trusting. She'll sign anything if she thinks it's for her own good. And if she doesn't, then we go to court. A deaf, elderly woman living alone who just spent her entire savings on a risky surgery? No judge would deny our petition for guardianship. I heard them moving toward the hallway and quickly slipped into the powder room, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they'd hear it. They passed by, talking about dinner plans, completely unaware that their careful plan had just been overheard by its intended victim. I stayed in that powder room for 20 minutes, sitting on the closed toilet lid, processing what I'd heard. My son, my baby boy who I'd sung to in the womb, who I'd held through ear infections and nightmares, who I'd taught to ride a bike and tie his shoes, was planning to have me declared incompetent and steal my home. The rage that built in my chest was volcanic, but it was quickly cooled by something more powerful: clarity. For 23 years, I'd lived in a world where I had to be careful, strategic, always thinking 3 steps ahead, because I couldn't rely on sound to warn me of danger. That skill hadn't disappeared with my deafness. I slipped out of their house unnoticed and took another taxi home. The driver asked if I was all right. Apparently, I looked shaken. I'm perfect, I told him, and I meant it, because I had something James and Emily didn't know I had: information, time, and the element of surprise. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and a legal pad, making plans. First, I needed evidence. Second, I needed a lawyer. Third, I needed to play the part of the deaf, trusting mother for just a little while longer. I started with research. Minnesota's elder abuse laws were strict. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult was a felony. I wasn't technically vulnerable, but they were certainly planning to make me so. I found 3 lawyers specializing in elder law and made appointments under the pretense of updating my will. The first lawyer, a young woman named Jennifer Martinez, listened to my story with growing alarm. Mrs. Henderson, what they're planning is illegal. If you have proof, I'm working on that, I said. She leaned forward. Minnesota is a one-party consent state. You can legally record any conversation you're part of. I smiled for the first time since leaving James's house. Even if they think I can't hear them? Especially then. If they're discussing this in your presence, believing you can't hear them, that's consciousness of guilt. It shows intent to deceive. I hired her on the spot. The next 3 days were an education in deception. I ordered tiny recording devices online, ones that looked like buttons, pens, even a brooch. I practiced my deaf persona in the mirror, reminding myself not to react to sounds, not to turn when someone entered a room, not to flinch when Emily's voice took on that particularly nasty tone she used when she thought I couldn't hear. Sunday arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood as I drove to James's house for our weekly dinner. I wore my best dress, the navy one with small flowers that William had loved, and the brooch that concealed a recording device with 12 hours of battery life. Lily answered the door, my beautiful granddaughter with James's eyes and her mother's sharp chin. She signed, "Hi, Grandma," with genuine enthusiasm, and my heart broke a little. The children didn't know what their parents were planning. They still loved me. Or, at least, they loved the idea of me. Ethan waved from the couch where he was playing video games, the sound of explosions and dramatic music filling the room. For 23 years, I'd watched him play in silence. Now I could hear every blast, every victory fanfare, every muttered curse he thought no one caught. "Mom's here," James called out, and Emily emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said, "Blessed and Grateful," a gift I'd given her 3 Christmases ago, back when I still believed she meant the smiles she gave me. The dinner was torture. They'd made my favorite, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the comfort food I'd cooked for James throughout his childhood. Emily had even made apple pie, presenting it with a flourish and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I played my part perfectly. I smiled and nodded when they gestured. I read their lips when they spoke directly to me. I didn't react when Emily said to James, "She seems more confused lately, doesn't she?" While I was sitting right there, cutting my meat. After dessert, James brought out papers. "Mom," he said, speaking slowly and clearly while signing, "we want to talk to you about your future." I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "These papers," he continued, sliding them toward me, "would help us help you. Power of attorney, just in case something happens." I picked up the papers, pretending to struggle with the small print. What I was actually doing was photographing each page with the pen camera in my hand. "Why?" I signed back. Emily jumped in, her sign language clumsy but earnest. "For safety. You alone. We worry. Such simple signs. Such massive lies." I stood up, shaking my head, and pushed the papers back. Their faces fell. James's expression hardened. "Mom, be reasonable," he said, forgetting to sign. I stared at him blankly. Emily grabbed his arm. "She can't hear you. Remember?" Then to me, she signed, "Think about it. Please." I nodded slowly, then pointed to my wrist where a watch would be. Time to go home. The drive home was the hardest of my life. Not because of what I discovered, I'd already processed that betrayal, but because of what I had to do next. The recording device had captured everything. Their discussion of my confusion, their frustration when I wouldn't sign. Emily's whispered, "We might need to move faster," on the incompetency filing, as I was putting on my coat. Jennifer Martinez listened to the recordings in her office the next day, her expression growing darker with each minute. "This is definitive proof of conspiracy to commit elder abuse," she said. "But Mrs. Henderson, are you sure you want to pursue this? These are your family members." "They stopped being family the moment they saw me as a payday," I replied. She nodded slowly. "Then here's what we're going to do." The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. We would file for a restraining order based on the evidence of planned financial exploitation. We would freeze any possibility of them gaining power of attorney. And we would do it all without them knowing I could hear. But first, I had one more family dinner to attend. The following Sunday was crisp and bright, one of those perfect Minnesota fall days where the leaves look like they're on fire. I arrived at James's house with a banana bread I'd baked that morning and my usual smile. But this time, I also brought Jennifer Martinez and a court officer, though they waited in a car down the street. Dinner proceeded normally until Emily brought out the papers again. Please, Mom, she signed, adding a sad face that might have worked if I hadn't heard her call me a deaf old bat to her sister. On the phone that morning, I picked up the pen. James and Emily leaned forward eagerly. I could hear their breathing quicken, could hear Emily whisper, finally, under her breath. Then I spoke. No. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. James dropped his fork. Emily's mouth fell open. I said no, I continued, my voice rusty from disuse but clear. I will not sign papers giving you power of attorney. I will not let you put me in Brookside Manor, and I will not let you sell my house. Mom, James stammered, you can hear? Every word, I said. Every cruel, calculating, heartless word. For the past 2 weeks, I've heard everything. Emily's face went from shocked to calculating in seconds. You've been lying to us? Pretending to be deaf? I laughed. Actually laughed. That's rich. Coming from the woman who's been pretending to care about me while planning to rob me blind. We never, James started. Once we get her declared incompetent, we can sell her house, I quoted. The deaf old bat won't even know what's happening. Your words, Emily. And you, James. We need to keep her happy for a few more months. Your words. Lily and Ethan had come into the dining room, drawn by the raised voices. Grandma can hear, Lily gasped. Yes, sweetheart, I said, turning to her with genuine warmth. I had surgery. It worked. I wanted to surprise you all with the wonderful news, but instead, I discovered something else entirely. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Emily's voice discussing how they could use my surgery as evidence of impaired judgment. Lily's face went pale. Ethan looked between his parents and me, confusion and dawning understanding warring on his young face. Mom, please, James said, reaching for my hand. We were just worried about you. We didn't mean. I pulled my hand away. You meant every word, and you acted on it. Did you know that conspiracy to commit elder abuse is a felony in Minnesota? Did you know that attempting to fraudulently obtain power of attorney can result in up to 5 years in prison? Emily stood up. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. Recordings, transcripts, your email to the lawyer about incompetency proceedings. Oh, yes, I know about that too. Your tour of Brookside Manor, where you put down a deposit using my forged signature on a check. Emily's face went white. How did you? I hired a private investigator, I said simply, and a lawyer. And I've already filed a restraining order. You'll be served in about, I checked my watch, 2 minutes. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. James answered it in a daze, accepting the papers from the court officer, while Jennifer Martinez entered behind him. Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, she said professionally. I'm representing Mrs. Henderson in this matter. The restraining order prevents you from coming within 500 feet of her or her property, and from attempting any financial transactions in her name. This is insane, Emily shrieked. She's our mother. I'm his mother, I corrected. You're just the woman who saw dollar signs when she looked at me. And James. I turned to my son, whose face had crumpled like a little boy's. You're the son who chose greed over love, who chose his wife's schemes over his mother's dignity. Grandma, Lily said quietly, tears streaming down her face. We didn't know. I swear we didn't know. I softened, opening my arms to her. She flew into them sobbing. I know, sweetheart. This isn't your fault. Ethan joined us, his 14-year-old attempt at stoicism crumbling. Are you really okay, Grandma? The surgery worked? It worked perfectly, I said, holding them both. I can hear everything now, including how much you two have grown up. Lily, your voice is beautiful. Ethan, you sound just like your grandfather. James stepped forward. Mom, please, can we talk about this? Work it out? Work it out. I pulled back from the children, keeping my arms around them. Like how you worked out selling my house. Like how you worked out declaring me incompetent? No, James, we're done talking. The only conversation we'll be having from now on will be through lawyers. You're destroying our family. Emily spat. No, I said firmly. You destroyed it the moment you decided I was worth more as a bank account than as a person. I'm just refusing to fund my own exploitation. I kissed Lily and Ethan on their foreheads. You two are always welcome to visit me with proper supervision. Your parents, however, are not. As I walked to the door, James called out one more time, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I turned back. You're not sorry you planned it, James. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. The rain had started again, but I didn't mind. I stood on their porch for a moment, listening to it patter on the roof, hearing the wind chimes next door, the distant sound of a dog barking. The world was full of sound again. Sound. And I was free to enjoy it without the burden of pretending to be less than I was. Jennifer drove me home, explaining the next steps. The restraining order was temporary, but would likely become permanent given the evidence. The attempted fraud charges were up to the district attorney, but she was confident they would prosecute. My assets were protected, my home was safe, and I was free. That night, I sat in my living room with all the lights on and windows open, listening to the symphony of my neighborhood. The Johnsons' teenage son practicing drums badly, Mrs. Chen calling her cat in for dinner, the whistle of the train that passed through town at 9:15 every night, a sound I hadn't heard in 23 years. My phone buzzed with texts from James, from Emily, even from Emily's mother, who called me cruel and heartless for destroying young lives over a misunderstanding. I deleted them all without reading past the first lines. But I saved the ones from Lily and Ethan, promising to visit soon, telling me they loved me, asking if I could hear their school concert next month. Yes, I texted back. I can hear everything now. The best part came 3 days later when my friend Patricia called. I'd given her my number at the senior center, explaining my miracle surgery. And she'd been eager to have a real phone conversation after years of written notes. Margaret, you won't believe what happened, she said, her voice bright with excitement. Remember how I told you my daughter-in-law was pushing us to sign over our vacation cabin? Well, I took your advice. I recorded everything. Turns out she'd already had a buyer lined up and was planning to pocket the money. We got a lawyer, just like you did. Good for you, I said, genuinely pleased. I never would have had the courage if you hadn't shared your story, Patricia continued. You've inspired half the senior center. Dorothy's changing her will after finding out her son's been stealing from her accounts. Robert's getting a restraining order against his nephew who's been threatening him. You've started a revolution, Margaret. A revolution. I like the sound of that. 2 months later, I was sitting in a coffee shop, enjoying a cappuccino and listening to a jazz trio, when I saw them. James and Emily, looking haggard and older, sitting in a corner booth. They didn't see me. I'd learned that hearing people rarely pay attention to older women sitting alone. The foreclosure is final next week, Emily was saying. I can't believe we're losing the house. We wouldn't be if you hadn't pushed so hard about my mother, James replied bitterly. Oh, so now it's my fault? You were the one who said she had all that money just sitting there. Because you kept talking about it. Every damn day, Emily. My mom this, your mom that. How unfair it was that she had a paid off house while we were struggling. Well, we're struggling even more now, Emily snapped. The legal fees alone have bankrupted us. And for what? Your mother's sitting pretty in her house while we're moving in with my parents. I smiled into my cappuccino. Karma, it seemed, had excellent hearing. A chair scraped next to me, and I looked up to find Lily standing there, taller than when I'd last seen her, wearing a college sweatshirt. Grandma? She said hesitantly. Lily. I stood and hugged her. What are you doing here? I saw you from outside. I was walking by and. Can I sit with you? Of course. She sat down, glancing nervously at her parents, who still hadn't noticed us. I wanted to tell you, I'm sorry for everything. I know my parents were wrong. What they did to you was horrible. You don't need to apologize for them, sweetheart. I know, but I need you to know that I see it. What they did. And I'm 18 now, so I can make my own choices about who I have in my life. She pulled out an envelope. I wanted to give you this. Inside was a handwritten letter and a photo. Lily in her cap and gown at graduation. The letter read, Dear Grandma, you couldn't come to my graduation because of the restraining order, but I wanted you to know that I thought of you. You taught me to be strong, to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's family making it hard. I'm going to state in the fall, studying social work. I want to help protect people like you tried to protect yourself. You're my hero. Love, Lily. I wiped my eyes, not caring that my mascara was probably running. Oh, sweetheart. This means everything to me. There's more, she said. Ethan wanted me to tell you he made first chair in band, French horn. He said to tell you he's learning your favorite song, the one Grandpa used to hum. Moon River, I whispered. William had hummed it constantly, and now I could hear it again in my memory, clear and sweet. Will you come to his concert? Lily asked. I checked. The restraining order doesn't apply to school events if my parents aren't there. They have to work that night. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She stood to leave, then turned back. Grandma, I'm glad you can hear now. Not just because of the surgery, but because you could hear who they really were. And you heard your own worth. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, I said. She left and I watched her walk past her parents' booth without acknowledging them. They saw her, called out, but she kept walking. James's face crumpled. Emily just looked angry. They'd lost more than a house and bank accounts. They'd lost their children's respect. That night, I stood in my backyard, listening to the crickets and the distant highway and the neighbors' wind chimes. I thought about the 23 years of silence, how I'd believed it had made me less than, had made me a burden. But silence had been my teacher. It had taught me to observe, to be patient, to read the truth in faces rather than words. And when I finally got my hearing back, I was ready to listen, really listen, to what the world was telling me. My phone rang. Dr. Carter's number. Margaret, I'm calling with wonderful news. The medical journal wants to do a feature on your case. The surgery's success after such prolonged deafness is unprecedented. Would you be willing to be interviewed? On one condition, I said, I want to tell the whole story. Not just the medical miracle, but what happened after. I want people to know that getting your hearing back means nothing if you don't listen to your own voice first. That's that's powerful, Margaret. Yes, absolutely. The interview is yours to shape. After we hung up, I made myself tea and sat at my computer. I'd started a blog called Hearing After Silence, where I shared not just my journey with deafness and recovery, but the deeper journey of learning to value myself. The response had been overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from adult children who'd been mistreated by family, who'd been seen as ATMS or burdens rather than people. My latest post was simple. Today marks 3 months since my surgery. 3 months of hearing, but more importantly, 3 months of being heard. Not by those who claim to love me while planning my exploitation, but by those who see me for who I am. A survivor, a fighter, a woman who refuses to be silenced even when she cannot hear. To those who think age makes us weak, who think disability makes us less than, who think kindness is an invitation for exploitation, you're wrong. We are not your retirement plan. We are not your convenience. We are not your burden to manage. We are human beings with dignity, rights, and voices, whether we can physically hear them or not. Tonight, I'll fall asleep to the sound of rain on my roof, in my own house, surrounded by my own choices. And tomorrow, I'll wake up and continue living my life on my terms. Because the most important voice I needed to hear wasn't my son's, or his wife's, or even my grandchildren's. It was my own. The comments poured in immediately. Stories of strength, of standing up, of reclaiming power. Patricia wrote, "You saved my father's life, Margaret. He was going to sign everything over until I showed him your story." Another woman wrote, "I've been deaf for 10 years. My family treats me like furniture. After reading this, I'm getting a lawyer." And another, "My mother is going through this right now. I'm sending her your blog. Thank you for speaking up." As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about the surgery. That $87,000 investment James had called wasteful. It had given me so much more than hearing. It had given me clarity, evidence, and ultimately, freedom. But most importantly, it had reminded me that I had never truly been silent. I had just been waiting for the right moment to speak. The sound of my own breathing, steady and strong, lulled me toward sleep. Tomorrow, I would visit the senior center and share my story in person. Next week, I would attend Ethan's concert. Next month, the medical journal article would be published. My voice, silenced for 23 years, was now echoing farther than I'd ever imagined possible. But tonight, in the quiet of my own home, I simply listened to the world, to the night, to the sound of my own heartbeat that had carried me through silence and back into sound. The sweetest noise of all wasn't James's apology or Emily's downfall or even my grandchildren's voices, beautiful as they were. The sweetest sound was my own voice saying, "I am enough. I have always been enough. And I will never be silent again." 6 months after the surgery, I stood in a packed auditorium at the Minnesota Senior Citizens Alliance, preparing to speak to over 200 elderly people and their families. The organizer had asked me to share my story after the blog went viral. Apparently, I'd become something of a folk hero in the elder rights community. "Good evening," I began, my voice strong and clear through the microphone. "My name is Margaret Henderson. And I want to tell you about the most expensive investment I ever made. It cost me $87,000, and it saved my life. Not because it gave me my hearing back, though it did that, but because it revealed the truth about those who claimed to love me. The room was silent, attentive. I saw faces that understood, weathered faces that had seen their own betrayals, their own dismissals, their own children turn into strangers. For 23 years, I lived in silence. But I learned something in those years. Silence isn't about what you can't hear. It's about what others think you can't understand. My son and daughter-in-law thought my deafness made me helpless. They thought it made me less than human. They thought it made me theirs to control. A woman in the front row was crying silently, nodding. They were wrong. And if someone in your life thinks your age, your disability, your dependence on them gives them the right to control you, to steal from you, to warehouse you like unwanted furniture, they're wrong too. I told them everything: the surgery, the discovery, the recordings, the legal battle. But more than that, I told them about the after, about Lily choosing integrity over comfort, about Ethan's concert where he played Moon River so beautifully I sobbed, about the online community of thousands who'd found strength in shared stories. Your voice matters, I concluded, whether you speak it, sign it, write it, or live it through your actions. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if they try, well, sometimes the sweetest sound isn't forgiveness. Sometimes it's the click of handcuffs on the wrists of those who thought you were too weak to fight back. The applause was thunderous. People stood, some with walkers, some with tears streaming down their faces. After the speech, they lined up to talk to me, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. An 82-year-old man grabbed my hands. My daughter's been pressuring me to sign over my house. She says it's for tax purposes. After hearing you, I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow. A woman using a wheelchair rolled up. My son hasn't visited in 2 years, but he calls every month about my will. I thought I was being paranoid. Thank you for showing me I'm not. For 3 hours, I listened, really listened, with the ears that modern medicine had given back to me, and with the heart that adversity had strengthened. As I was leaving, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview. Mom, it's James. New number. Please read this. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Mom, I know you'll probably delete this, but I need you to know something. Emily and I are divorced. The kids chose to live with me, and they were right to. I've been in therapy for 6 months now, trying to understand how I became someone who could plan to hurt his own mother. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I hear you now. Really hear you. Not your words, but your worth. The worth I should have seen all along. I'm sorry. Your son, if I can still call myself that, James. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I hear you too, James. But hearing and healing aren't the same thing. Maybe someday. For now, focus on being the father Lily and Ethan deserve. They're watching. Make sure they see someone worth seeing. I sent it, then blocked the number. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Some bridges, once burned, needed to stay ash. But that didn't mean new ones couldn't be built elsewhere. A year after the surgery, I published my memoir, Hearing in the Silence, a story of betrayal, survival, and the voice that saved me. It became a bestseller in the senior community. The proceeds went to establishing the Margaret Henderson Fund for Elder Justice, providing legal assistance to elderly people facing family exploitation. Dr. Carter wrote the foreword, calling me not just a medical miracle, but a testament to the human spirit's ability to transform trauma into triumph. Lily wrote the afterword. In it, she said, "My grandmother taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you can't hear them coming. It's about who speaks truth when lies would be easier. It's about who stands up when standing up costs everything. My parents forgot that. I never will." The book tour took me to 15 cities. In each one, I met hundreds of people with their own stories of family betrayal, elder abuse, and ultimately, survival. We created a network, a chorus of voices that had been silenced for too long. In Chicago, a woman stood up during the Q&A and said, "My daughter convinced me I was showing signs of dementia and had me evaluated. Turns out she'd been drugging my tea to make me seem confused. Your story gave me the courage to investigate." In Phoenix, a man shared how his son had been slowly transferring assets while he was recovering from a stroke. "I thought I was paranoid. You showed me I was right." In Seattle, a couple in their 80s approached me after the reading. "We've rewritten our will," the woman said. "Everything's going to charity now. Our children can earn their own money or learn to value us while we're alive." Each story strengthened my resolve. We weren't outliers or cautionary tales. We were a generation that had given everything, only to be seen as ATMS and inconveniences by those we'd sacrificed for. The anniversary of my surgery arrived with spring rain and the distant sound of thunder. I sat in my sunroom, watching the drops race down the windows, listening to the symphony of the storm. Ethan was coming for lunch. He'd started visiting every Sunday, teaching me about modern music while I taught him about the classics. Lily was in her second year of college, calling me every Wednesday night to talk about her social work studies and her plans to reform elder care. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone else, but I answered it anyway. James stood on my porch, soaked from the rain, looking older and thinner than when I'd last seen him at that disastrous dinner. Behind him stood a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professional, kind eyes. "Mom," he said quietly, "this is Dr. Sarah Winters. She's my therapist. I wanted to ask if you'd consider a joint session. Not for reconciliation, necessarily, but for closure, for understanding." I looked at him for a long moment. The boy I'd raised, the man who'd betrayed me, the father who was trying to be better for his children. "One session," I said finally, "for Lily and Ethan's sake, so they don't carry this burden forever." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you. Thank you, Mom. I'm not doing it for you," I said clearly. "I'm doing it for them and for me, because carrying anger is heavy, and I've decided to travel light in whatever years I have left." The session was brutal, raw, honest in ways our family had never been. James cried, ugly, genuine tears, as he recounted how financial stress and Emily's constant pressure had transformed him into someone he didn't recognize, how he'd convinced himself that I wouldn't understand, that I was better off not knowing, that it was somehow a kindness to plan my life without my input. "I turned you into a problem to be solved," he said, his voice breaking, "instead of seeing you as my mother." The woman who worked 3 jobs to pay for my college, who stayed up all night when I had pneumonia, who learned sign language at 45 just to communicate with me after Dad died. Why? I asked simply. Why was it so easy to forget all that? Dr. Winters intervened gently. James has been exploring how financial stress and societal devaluation of the elderly created a perfect storm. It doesn't excuse his actions, but understanding the why can help prevent repetition. I saw you as someone from the past, James admitted, not someone with a future. Emily kept saying you'd had your life, that it was our turn now, and I let her voice become louder than yours, even though yours was the one that sang me to sleep. That told me I could be anything. That never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. Until you gave up on me, I said, quietly. Yes, he whispered, until I gave up on you. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. We didn't hug at the end of the session. We didn't make plans for coffee or tentative holiday arrangements. But something shifted. The anger that had lived in my chest like a hot coal began to cool. Not into forgiveness. That would take time, if it came at all, but into something more like understanding. I want you to know, I said as we stood to leave, that I don't hate you, James. I hate what you did. I hate who you became. But I don't hate the boy you were or the man you're trying to become. Focus on that man. Your children need him. He nodded, tears still streaming. I love you, Mom. I know I have no right to say that after everything, but I do. I always did. I just lost my way. Then find it, I said. But find it without me for now. Maybe someday we can build something new. But the relationship we had, the one where I gave everything and asked for nothing, that's gone forever. I understand, he said. As I drove home, I thought about forgiveness, how it's portrayed as this magical cure-all. Like you say the words and everything's fixed. But real forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. And sometimes the person you need to forgive most is yourself. Forgive yourself for trusting too much, for not seeing the signs, for believing that love meant never having to protect yourself from those you love. That night, I updated my blog. Today, I sat across from my son for the first time in a year. He's in therapy, working to understand how he became someone who could plan his mother's imprisonment. I'm proud of him for doing the work, but I'm prouder of myself for demanding it, for refusing to accept sorries without change, words without action, tears without transformation. To those of you struggling with similar betrayals, know this. Forgiveness is not required for your healing. You can move forward without moving backward. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can love the memory of who they were without accepting who they became. Your peace is not dependent on their apology. Your worth is not determined by their recognition of it. Your voice matters whether they hear it or not. Tomorrow marks 2 years since my surgery gave me back my hearing. But every day since, I've been giving myself back my voice. Not the physical ability to speak, but the deeper power to be heard, to matter, to take up space in a world that would prefer I shrink. I'm 70 now. Some would say my best years are behind me. But when I hear the rain on my roof, when I listen to my granddaughter's dreams, when I stand before rooms of people finding strength in my story, I know the truth. These aren't my declining years. They're my ascending ones. Every day I rise a little higher above what tried to bury me. Your voice is waiting. Whether you're 60 or 90, whether you're fighting family or strangers or systems designed to silence you, your voice is waiting. Let it out. Let it ring. Let it shatter the glass ceilings they've tried to place over your head. The world needs to hear you. More importantly, you need to hear yourself. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments, emails, messages from around the world. My inbox filled with stories of courage, of standing up, of voices reclaimed from the silence of dismissal and disrespect. 2 weeks later, I received a call from a producer at CBS Sunday Morning. They wanted to do a segment on elder abuse, centered on my story, but expanding to the broader issue. You've started a movement, she said. Elder voices are being heard in ways they haven't been before. Will you help us amplify them? Yes, I said without hesitation. The film crew arrived on a sunny Thursday. They interviewed me in my sunroom, the light streaming through the windows. Doctor, Carter had helped me pick out after the surgery. Special glass that created tiny rainbows when the sun hit just right. Margaret, the reporter asked, what would you say to adult children watching who might be viewing their elderly parents as burdens rather than blessings? I looked directly into the camera. I would say this: one day, if you're lucky, you'll be old. You'll be the one who moves slower, who needs help with technology, who repeats stories, because they're the treasures of your life. And in that moment, you'll hope desperately that someone sees your worth beyond your utility, that someone values your wisdom over your wallet, that someone remembers you're not just aging, you're living, feeling, dreaming, just in a body that's been around longer. Your parents gave you life. They gave you chances. Most of them gave you everything they had, and then some. The least you can give them is dignity. And if you can't do that, then at least have the decency to walk away, rather than strip them of everything they've built while pretending it's for their own good. The segment aired 3 weeks later. It won an Emmy. More importantly, it sparked a national conversation about elder financial abuse. AARP started a campaign called Hear Our Voices, based on my story. Law firms began offering pro bono services to elderly clients facing family exploitation. But the most meaningful response came in a handwritten letter from Lily. Grandma, I watched the interview from my dorm room. My roommates watched with me. We all cried. One of them, Jessica, called her grandmother immediately after. They hadn't talked in 2 years because Jessica's mom had convinced her that Grandma was difficult. You're changing the world, Grandma, not by being perfect, but by being perfectly yourself. By refusing to be silenced even when you couldn't hear. By showing us that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise. I'm changing my major. Instead of general social work, I'm specializing in elder advocacy law. I want to be the lawyer families like ours need, the one who sees the person, not just the case, the one who makes sure voices like yours are heard in courtrooms and boardrooms and every room where decisions about the elderly are made. Thank you for being my hero. Thank you for standing up, even when it meant standing alone. Thank you for showing me that family isn't about DNA. It's about respect, dignity, and love that doesn't come with a price tag. I love you, Grandma, and I hear you. Really, truly hear you. Lily. I framed that letter and hung it next to my doctorate, the honorary one the University of Minnesota gave me for extraordinary contributions to elder rights and dignity. It means more than the doctorate. It means the cycle is broken. It means the next generation will do better. As I write this, it's been 3 years since the surgery. 3 years of sound, of voice, of truth. James and I have coffee once a month now, supervised by doctor. Winters at first, then gradually on our own. We're building something new, carefully, slowly, with boundaries and respect. He's a different man now, humbled and genuine in ways he never was before. Emily is gone, remarried to someone who apparently appreciates her calculating nature. I wish them well from a great distance. The kids are thriving. Ethan got into Juilliard for French horn. He called me before he called anyone else. You gave me music back, Grandma, he said, when I didn't even know it was missing. Lily is in law school now, top of her class, running a legal clinic for elder abuse victims. And me? I'm 71 years old, and I've never been more alive. I wake up every morning to a world of sound. Birds, traffic, the coffee maker gurgling, life happening all around me. But more than that, I wake up to a world where my voice matters, where my story has power, where my years of silence have become a symphony of strength for others. Yesterday, I got an email from a woman in Japan who'd read my translated memoir. You saved my mother's life, she wrote. She was going to sign everything over to my brother. After reading your story, she hired a lawyer instead. This morning, a man in Ireland messaged me on Facebook. I'm 78 and just had cochlear implant surgery. Your story gave me courage to face whatever I might hear. Tonight, I'll speak at another senior center, this time in Dallas. Tomorrow, I fly to Washington to testify before Congress about strengthening elder abuse laws. Next week, I'm recording the audiobook of my memoir, reading my own words with the voice I reclaimed. But right now, in this moment, I'm sitting in my garden, listening to the wind chimes William hung 30 years ago. They've been singing all this time. I just couldn't hear them. Now I can, and their song sounds like freedom, like victory, like a voice that refuses to be silenced ever again. To everyone reading this who's been told they're too old, too weak, too much of a burden, you're not. You're a treasure trove of stories, wisdom, and strength. Your voice matters. Your life matters. And anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is telling you more about their character than your worth. Stand up, speak out, be heard, because the sweetest sound in the world isn't an apology from those who wronged you. It's not the judge ruling in your favor or the restraining order being served. The sweetest sound is your own voice saying, I matter. I've always mattered, and I will never be silenced again. And if you need proof that it's never too late to reclaim your power, well, I'm living, breathing, hearing proof. 3 years ago, I was a deaf widow being plotted against by my own family. Today, I'm a best-selling author, an elder rights advocate, and a grandmother who can hear every beautiful note her grandson plays at Juilliard. They thought my silence made me weak. They were wrong. Silence taught me to listen. And when I finally could hear, I heard everything, including my own worth. Now, it's your turn. What will you hear when you really start listening?